Hello everyone, Aussie Select here. Just quickly before the video starts, I'm going to mention that tomorrow I will be doing an election live stream on the channel with SORMON for the Victorian state election. So if you're interested in watching the results trickle in with us, we will be around to take all your comments and questions. So see you there. Hello everyone, this is Aussies Elect back with a video for the Victorian election. I know I'm extremely late. I'm sorry, I've been busy. I was overseas and I've just come back and I was like really tired for a couple of days. I also don't know if I said that I'd do a video about the budget, but that didn't end up happening because the mini budget released by Jim Chalmers like a couple of weeks ago was really boring. So I was just like, meh, I'll just wait until the Victorian election. Anyway, we're here 2 days before the election. We've got a lot of stuff to discuss. This will be a prediction. This will also just be a general like discussion video. I'm here with a guest. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, Duma. Here to help Aussie Select out, talk about my state and its wacky election we're going to be having in a few days.
Yeah, so I've never lived in Victoria. I've visited there a couple of times. I've never lived there, and I really don't know much about
Well,
Victorian politics. So
well, I'll be blunt. You're a very lucky man to have
mm,
never lived here.
um, I did try to watch the debate, the Sky News debate between Matthew Guy and Daniel Andrews last night, but I was so bored I couldn't pass like 5 minutes. So I don't really know much about what's going on at
Yeah,
all.
I missed it at the time. Tried to watch a few clips, but it wasn't a particularly interesting debate. They only like got sort of fired up at each other very towards the end, so it wasn't even like interesting to see them like shit talking each other.
Right, okay. Well, let's talk about the current scenario at the moment, what we've got Labor on 56 seats, Coalition on 27, Greens on 3, Independent on 2. I believe that the Independents currently have 3 seats, but then one of them is retiring, so it's notionally a Labor seat. There's also some shenanigans with border redrawns and seats changing, but at the moment, this is, I think, pretty sure what the situation is at the moment with 56-27. Um, in the upper house, there's another situation, but I think it'd be completely irrelevant at what the current house is because it's just going to be such a shake-up that I'm not going to really talk about it. We will talk about the upper house after we kind of talk a bit about the lower house. Um, so basically, what a lot of polls are predicting is about a 3 to 4% swing to the coalition. I believe last time Labour Party got 57.6% of the two-party preferred, and it's looking like they'll probably get something like about a 4% swing, so about maybe 53.6 to about 54% of the vote. That's what most polls are saying. Um, and usually you would say that that would probably lead to a majority government, but things are a little bit different this time because of you might have seen the federal election and how that turned out. Um, Crossbenchers there's a hint going on that the crossbench is going to grow this election, and that not only includes the Greens, who are looking at the seats of Pascoe Vale, um, Richmond, and Northcote, but also independents, which are looking at a bunch of seats in the sort of inner suburbs, both Labor and coalition seats. I'll let you talk a little bit about the independents, often called the Teal Independents Duma. Your opinion of them? Do you think that they're going to make much of a mark this election?
Um, I think they have a lot of potential, and I think out of all the teal seats to be looking at, like all the potential ones where the teals are making a play for, I think the seat of Hawthorne is the most interesting. So that was that has primarily been a very safe Liberal seat for its history. It's mostly comprised of where the federal election of Kooyong is comprised of. So it's in the eastern suburbs, what of upper class, typical Liberal voters. Now, at the previous election in 2018, it was won by a Labour candidate. I think his name was John Kennedy. Yeah, John Kennedy. He was the guy who won that time. Very close. I think it was only a 1% margin he won it by. And it's interesting to see this cycle, what Hawthorne's looking like, because as the poll bludger was actually saying in their analysis of the Vic election today, Labour's not even involved in the conversation around Hawthorne. That race is entirely seen as a contest between the Liberal candidate John Pasuto, I think is how you pronounce his last name, who was the incumbent prior to 2018, and the independent Teal candidate Melissa Lowe. So Labour, despite winning the seat at the last election, isn't even involved in the conversation this time around. And I think that's very interesting to see because in 2018, Labour made a lot of inroads with those sort of upper class, more moderate Liberal voters. Like they picked up a lot of votes in those eastern areas, and a lot of people were thinking that was the start of maybe Labour gaining some kind of political dominance by making inroads into those areas. It now looks as if those voters who previously abandoned the Whibs have tossed Labour aside and are now choosing whether to go back to the Liberals and go back home or go with the Teals as they did at the federal election. So I think it's something a lot of people aren't talking about, that the Teals are not only just having an impact on the Liberals, but they are taking a big impact on Labour by siphoning voters who were just a few years ago seen as like the potential future of Labour's base in Victoria.
Right, and
Um,
you said yesterday that you thought that there's a possibility that the Teal independents aren't getting as much press as they got at the federal election. Do you think that that's actually the case, or do you think that's just a symptom of the fact that it's a state election, not a federal election?
um, I think it's a mix of both. Even with it being a state election in mind, and state elections always get less buzz. I was still expecting there to be a bit more buzz about the Teals. Like the biggest thing that's been talked about lately is their legal challenge to keep their how to vote card intact. That's sort of like been the biggest talking point around them recently. Like there just sort of hasn't been quite the amount of buzz I was expecting to be. I think most people have been talking about the Greens in terms of like a third party having success. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out because this could be a sign that maybe the Teals are a bit of a flash in the pan, like they had their success at the federal due to sort of different priorities that voters have at the federal level, and maybe that's not going to translate into them actually being a force at the state election. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on how that plays out.
So as well as like inner city seats, also the seat of Mornington was also one targeted by the Teals. Would it be? Well, that was right, right? You told me about that, right?
Yes, that's ringing a bell. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot about the seat of Mornington. It is, I believe, it's a similar kind of seat to Hawthorne in it's like a sort of upper class area that sort of favors moderate liberals, and that's where the danger of the Teals picking it up comes from.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. So yeah, some other seats that are looking at it like they're focusing on, I think, are Brighton, Caulfield, I believe. Um, maybe Melbourne. I'm not sure. Definitely Kew, um, which has a weirdly similar name to Kew Yong in the federal. And yeah, it is basically
Now,
in the federal seat of
Q, I
Kew. Yeah.
actually think is another one that they have a good deal of potential in. That's currently helped by Tim Smith, who suffered actually quite a big swing against him at the last election, even though he still kept his seat by a great margin. But he's been in quite a bit of hot water due to an incident. I believe it was later last year where he got drunk and drove his car into someone's house, um, which is quite the incident for a politician to be involved in. Um, and I think he is sort of seen as one of the further right members of the Liberals. So I could easily see voters in Kew leaning towards going with the Teals to sort of ditch Tim Smith and send a message to the Liberal Party at large.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, Tim Smith was the outgoing member for Q. Um, so uh, maybe I think like there's a couple of seats that like the Labour Party's worrying about losing to the coalition, which is this Box Hill, this Ashwood. Not sure about Ringwood. I mean the poll bludger. If I go on their website, hang on. There was a basically a Herald Sun thing today, which stated a bunch of seats where Labour could lose. Um, Bayswater, Bass, Nepean, Pakenham to the Liberals, Ashwood, Box Hill, and Ringwood under serious threat. And Eltham, Mumble, Cranbourne, and Eureka considered to be in play. Richmond and Northcote to the Greens, as well as possibly Pascoe Vale, Alberts Park, Footscray. Um, Melton, Point Cook, and Werribee could be one-way independents. So I mean, this is all like, I don't know. This is probably, this could be all bullshit for all we know, really. Like
It,
it says extensive polling in hundreds of focus groups and key seats across the state over the last 2 years. Like over the last 2 years, like that's, I don't know, that's such a large amount of time. So it could just be all bullshit. Like when it comes to these state elections, even in like a big state in Victoria, you don't actually get like the kind of polling that you would get in a federal election where there's so much like
Yeah,
stuff.
from my personal research ahead in the lead up to this video, from what I've seen, it leaves a lot to be decided in comparison to the federal polling, which already isn't perfect. So it's yeah, you aren't getting the best shake of things
But
when it
yeah,
comes to
everything's
polling.
pointing to there being a couple of percentage swing against Labor. Definitely not like enough to um, give the Liberal government, or the Liberal opposition rather, a really outstanding majority. If you look at other sites like prediction websites, this is AE forecasts. They've had a forecast for Victoria for a long time actually, like since really early this year they had this forecast, and it hasn't changed dramatically over the time, but it has dipped down recently with the Resolve poll, which had Labor only ahead on 53 to 47, but it still gives Labor a majority with three extra seats on top as well, of 48. So, and it's giving Labor like a 92% chance of winning government. So nobody's really claiming that the Liberal Party have a chance of majority government at this stage. Basically, people are just saying that a minority government is something that could definitely happen. This is giving, well, the independent the best chance to win Hawthorn. A forecasts. It's giving roughly an equal chance for the coalition to take Ashwood. Thinks an independent will win Kew. Thinks an independent is competitive in Caulfield, but it's more likely to go to the coalition. Thinks that the coalition will win Baywater. Thinks that Labor will keep Ringwood. Thinks the coalition will win Ripon. Anyway, so okay, so basically it's just predicting that Labor is going to lose about like 8 seats or something like that. Independents might pick up a couple. Greens might pick up a couple. Liberals might pick up a couple. But
If I could comment about the Greens for a
sure.
second, I would more than be willing to put money on the Greens picking up Richmond and Northcote. Um, those seats, it's very tight between Labour and the Greens in those seats, and the Liberals have announced that they are going to be preferencing Labour last in those seats, which is a reversal of their previous preferencing in the last few years. I believe since 2010 they've been preferencing Labour above the Greens. But this year around, they are switching that preferencing, and I think that might be enough for I think that'll be enough for the Greens to get over the line in those two seats.
Well, the betting markets would agree with you there, Mr. Duma. The Northcote's on greens on 1.15, and the other one was like 1.10. So yeah, it looks like that the Greens will probably pick up these 2 seats. So very good result for them. But they had a good result in the federal election too, so not a huge surprise. So if we go to the list of seats here and we look at just like a flat swing, we could kind of look at if the swing is about 4%, or we could look at Labor losing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12. But one of these is to the Greens. So not all of them would go to the coalition, and this is just on like a flat swing. So this would put Labor, if we go back to the chart here, this would put Labor at, I'll just fill in these with coalition to start, on about enough to just have a majority, basically, or maybe like a majority of 2. The betting sites, the betting markets are giving Labor 50 seats or around 51 or something like that. So they also sort of feel like Labor's definitely, or Labor's is more likely to get a majority government, but only by a couple of seats. But I think the betting markets are a little bit, they're a little bit. They always kind of like stick with the status quo if there's sort of like a disagreement. I mean, apart from the fucking 2019 federal election where they just thought Labor would win like 92 seats, but that's another story. But
I've personally never been a big fan of using the betting markets as an indicator for election. I get why people do it, but I just never really been
then they're
overly
never
big on it.
really a strong indicator, but I guess they're always something to look at, because where these rich people are willing to put their money um, on everything. Um, so yeah, probably it's likely that Labor will win about, I don't know, 47 seats. Independents will win about maybe about 5 or 6, and the Greens will win about 4 or 5. So you might end up looking like a parliament looking like this. The coalition only picks up a couple of seats. This is probably a pretty like sensible scenario, I'd say, at this moment. Do you agree with me, Mr. Duma?
I would agree. I have long so for a long time leading up to this election, I was feeling a WA style wipeout. I thought Andrews was going to cruise to a very easy victory and expand his majority. Seeing how things have played out, I think a map like this is probably a very reasonable prediction. Um, it would be very nice for a minority Labour government. I think that would do a lot just in terms for integrity in government. Has been
Do you think
missing.
that like Andrews would get sacked if they went into minority government, or do you reckon he would stay on?
I think he would stay on. I think Andrews has a very tight grip on the party, and he still is a fairly popular leader. And at the moment, there's not really anyone else to replace him. I I'm blanking on his name now, but he's deputy leader. I think it was James Mastriano or something. It was something like that. I'm really blanking on it, and I apologize. But he was seen as the next in line to the throne. He is retiring, or he might have already resigned. So he's gone, and there's not really much buzz around anyone else as a future leader. So I think they would just keep Andrews for the sake that he is still a fairly popular party leader and that there's just not really anyone ready to take over from him at this stage.
All right. So let's move on to the upper house. So this is actually I've used Anthony Green's election calculator, and after just kind of fiddling around with it and putting some really like baseless estimates for each party, this is kind of what I've come up with. Um, there's a few sort of like nuances to each of these seats. I mean, this is in no ways really like a really good prediction or anything like that. It's just basically just what I'm kind of getting the vibe from everything, and this would give the Liberal Party a much better upper house than they had last time. It'd be pretty sad for the Freedom parties. They're not going to get any seats apart from the Liberal Democrats. Um, but I don't know. Maybe they'd be happy that the coalition has like 6 more seats or something like that, and the Greens would be happy to have a couple more seats. Any thoughts on the upper house, Duma?
It'd be very boring if this is the result. I am personally hoping for a very colourful upper house. There's a lot of talk about about the major parties being punished in this election, and it would be nice even in the event of like a majority Andrews government of like the upper house being where the major parties are really punished. Like maybe in a scenario where people are still willing to vote for the majors in the lower house, but choose to split from them in the upper, um, and give more of the minor parties a bigger share in the upper house. That would be
Yeah,
my ideal
to be
scenario.
fair, on this sort of thing, I'm only giving like a very small swing towards against the Labour Party and a very small swing towards the coalition for this. So if there's a swing against both of the major parties, and this is significant, you might see a bunch of like random micro parties show up. Um, but yeah, other chances, other things I've come up with is that Hinch Justice has a good chance in Western Victoria. Um, Labor DLP has a good chance in Western Metropolitan Region. Sustainable Australia is next competitive in the Southern Metropolitan Region. The Greens is next competitive in the Southeastern Metropolitan Region. Both Labor and Liberal Democrats are competitive in the Northern Victoria region. Labor DLP, I believe it's that Labor Party guy who quit and like is joined the Democratic Labor Party. Anyway, he's got like some weird name. He's also competitive in the Northern Metropolitan region. Fiona Patton, um, she I think she'll do pretty well because she won basically on below the line preferences last
Oh,
time.
just to button, that was a Liberal Party leader who ended up. That was a Liberal Party MP who ended up joining the DLP.
Oh, was it? What's his name?
Bernie Finn, he was the one who left the Liberals due to his views on abortion.
No, there was another guy. There was like another guy called Sermonoliak or something like that. Like he's got. I'm sorry, he's got some Eastern European name. Um, he's running for the DLP in the Northern Metropolitan Region.
Oh, right, okay,
And
sorry.
he has a decent chance. Like it seems like. Um, in the Eastern Victoria region, the Labor Party have a chance of a second seat there, and the northeastern metropolitan region, the Greens have a chance of taking that last seat off the Liberal Democrats. Um, so northeastern on the map, it's called the Eastern Metropolitan Region. So I don't know why that is, but yeah, that's that. So yeah, I mean maybe the coalition won't do as well as I'm predicting. I don't think Labor will do as well as last time. I think the Greens might do a tiny bit better than last time. They only got one seat last time. Um, and I don't think the Victorian Socialists will pick up a seat. I think they're trying again in Northern, excuse me, Metropolitan, but it's probably going to go to the Reason Party instead. Um, yeah, legalized cannabis will win a seat in Victoria, possibly after winning a couple of seats in Western Australia. So, is there anything more to really discuss, Mr. Doomer, about this election, or is that pretty much it?
Just sort of thinking everything over. So we touched upon the Teals, talked about the Greens' chance in some of those metropolitan seats. Um, Nothing's really jumping out at me. I guess, do you want to talk about the weird buzz that's popping up today about Andrews possibly losing his seat?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we could take a look at Andrew's seat, sure, yeah.
Now, I do just want to preface this, like, before anyone in the comments writes anything. I'm not saying he's going to lose his seat, but, like, there's been a weird amount of buzz, like, popping up today. Like, a lot of news outlets have been wanting articles about it. I think it comes from the polling of an independent candidate, possibly the
Right.
Swudgate guy, I think.
Look how many
Um,
candidates there are for this election, this seat. Oh my God. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's like 13 candidates and there's like 4 independents or something. Or 6 independents. Oh my God. Jesus. Okay. Well, I mean, it does have a margin of like, how much? Like 15.8%. So, I mean, I doubt it. Like, I don't know why he would lose his own seat. Like, um, I don't know. I think he's
it
fine.
looks it from what I've seen. The campaign manager for one of the independents, I believe it's the Swudgate guy. Came out and said they had internal polling showing Andrews was going to lose. And all these news outlets have just won with it, like as a clickbaity article, saying Andrews is a chance of losing his seat. I don't think it will happen, but they've chose to run with it.
All right, fair enough. All right, well, I guess before we go, I guess I'll just like ask about sort of your opinion on, um, why this election is only going to have like a little bit of a swing towards Labor, and it's not going to have like a massive swing towards Labor. Like, what's your
You mean
vibes
it's
as?
swinging it towards the coalition, or
Sorry, a
yeah?
swing away from Labor. Sorry, and a swing towards the coalition. Yeah.
Well, I think the main reason is just the Victorian Liberals are not an effective opposition. Um, Labor, Victoria is always a hard seat for the Liberals. It's very politically left wing. Labor has always been favoured in its elections, and so it's already an uphill battle for the coalition. But then add in the fact that currently Victoria Liberals are just not in a good state, and it's even harder. I really don't think Matthew Guy, no pun intended, is the white guy to be taking on Andrews. I think any leader, anyone who wants to beat Dan Andrews, needs to be able to push the issue of corruption and integrity in government. I think that's a big issue that Andrews has going against him. And I think it's something that even some Labour voters are concerned about. And it's probably something that helps the Teals. And I commend the Teals for focusing on that because that's probably their best bet of picking up votes in this election. Um, and Matthew Guy, he's not the right person to be pushing that message because he himself is tainted as a corrupt leader. There was an incident in 2018 known as Lobstergate, where he was caught having a lobster dinner with a known mafioso. And ever since then, he's just had that taint on him as a corrupt politician. So, him trying to go out and say Andrews is corrupt, we need more integrity in government, that's not really going to work because people recognize him as the guy who had dinner with a mafia boss. So they're not going to listen to him on that issue. Like they can't take him seriously. So I think a better leader for the Liberals was needed. Unfortunately, they don't really have anyone else. Matthew O'Brien, I hope that's Michael O'Brien, that's his name. I can't even remember his name. That's how bad of a leader he was. He was really ineffective, even more so than Guy, and he got done in last year. And while Guy's an improvement, he's still not the best guy. But well, hey, who else do they have? Like that's really the problem Victoria Liberals have, and that's why, if anything, we are just going to see a small swing against Labour. Like I really think with how this election has played out, there was potential for the Libs to really make a big impact, but due to their organisation issues and just not having a good host of candidates, they've just really failed to take advantage of it. When your best bet is bringing Jeff Kennett out of retirement, you know you've got problems. So I think the Liberals really going forward need to have better people to take charge of the party if they're going to have any chance of returning to government in Victoria anytime soon.
Alright, so most people agree there's not going to be a landslide coalition victory this election. We'll have to wait until the next election in 2026 for that to possibly happen. Pretty big consensus the Andrews government will be re-elected. Whether or not it will be a minority government or not, we will have to see. But thank you everyone for watching, and thank you very much Duma for joining me today for this
Always a
little
pleasure.
video.